Brittany Smith, welcome to the Deep Life.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Dan and I are absolutely thrilled to welcome you on the show. We can't wait to dive deep on the magic of mushrooms and psilocybin with the expert medicine woman that you are. And for our listeners, we need to praise the absolutely beautiful psilocybin ceremony that we had together with you in Costa Rica when we were there in December. That is how Brittany, Dan, and I met. It was nothing short of life-changing. And we came back, Dan and I, from that trip, different people, not only for the retreat that we were on, but specifically because of the space that Brittany held and cultivated within that mushroom ceremony. And it was so magical and beautiful. And we can't wait to talk to you about your wisdom and knowledge and the wisdom and knowledge of these sacred plant medicines.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
So tell us, you are originally from the United States, from South Carolina. How does a girl from South Carolina become a Costa Rican medicine woman?
It's such a long and fun story. Basically, South Carolina, where I grew up on a series of barrier islands on the coast. So I was always surrounded by nature, and I feel really blessed to have had that upbringing of just so much of the natural world being a part of my life. I was just telling my friends the other day, there was a TV show that came out when we were little called Gullah Gullah Island, and I'm from where Gullah Gullah Island is where I grew up, and we were friends with them. I got to be on the show and stuff. So it was that natural world was always such a huge part of my life. And then when I was 17, we have a lot of cows on these islands, and somebody just brought a bunch of mushrooms to a party. And I was okay, yeah, let's try them. I would love to try. So I tried them and I had so much fun. And I also as a 17-year-old, I think that we're all navigating a lot of really big shifts. I know as a young woman, I was incredibly emotional, moody, hormonal, and always arguing with my parents. And I thought that I knew everything for sure. And the mushrooms helped me, not in the way that I'm working with them now, but they just opened a door to me of how things could be, how much magic and possibility there is in the world. And that was really special in that moment. And we did the funniest thing. We all just went to Walmart that night, because Walmart is the only place in this little town that was open 24 hours, and we had so much fun in Walmart. We spent, I think,
I can imagine.
Yeah. We were buying chips and pajamas, and I was just yeah, time of my life. And that was my first time with the mushrooms, and it was just so expansive and lovely. And after that, what I started to find really quickly was that even if I didn't take the mushrooms, say one of my friends did, and maybe they were having a difficult time, I would be the person that they would call and be hey, could you maybe come and help this person kind of ground themselves a little bit and come back. And I just loved to do it. It was such a pure heart, I love to do this, and I'm so happy to just go there into that person's experience and be there with them, and then slowly navigate it together. So that was an amazing opening, which led to me basically wanting to write a book about all of this information that I was receiving at that time. And so I went to college. I went to the College of Charleston, and I was going to study communications. So I was this will be a good way to learn about writing and communicating. And I got pretty far into my communication major when I took a class called Nature, Religion in America. And that class, Nature, Religion in America, I was oh my gosh, this is exactly it. This is, everything that I love and care about, and I'm so passionate about it. And I changed my major. Everybody thought I was crazy to be a religious studies major. What are you going to do with that? But I majored in religious studies and psychology. And what I got to do with that, because it's so broad, there's so much you can look at there. But what I really focused on was religious experience and the many pathways that we have to religious experience. And so that gave me access to like just learning about a lot of different indigenous plant medicines, as well as other psychedelic therapies. I got to interview, really a lot of people on the cutting edge of what's becoming so present in the world right now. I always knew, like, at some point in my 20s, I was still in college, I always knew I was supposed to live in Costa Rica. And then, as like happens in life, I allowed myself to get talked out of it. I was like, okay, to be like young and be a woman and be traveling alone, and maybe it's not safe, and maybe I should go to somewhere that's less developed, because Costa Rica has a lot of like Western tendencies. And then at some point, like flash forward 10 years later, I'm 30, or I'm about to turn 30, and I still knew, like, deep down, okay, I'm supposed to be in Costa Rica. Like, I'm definitely meant to be there. And so I came for my 30th birthday. I spent a week here, and it was like, I mean, to be totally honest, I was at like the peak of my alcoholism at that point. I got like completely drunk, and I ended up spending my 30th birthday just like crying in a pool, because I was like, I'm a healer, and like I have allowed my life to become like so hectic, so chaotic, that I cannot heal anybody. And unless I like dedicate myself to my own healing, like I'm never going to be able to help anybody else. And so that was like a really big moment. I kind of went back to the States, and then, that was April, and I moved to Costa Rica like the following January.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I think there's so much to unpack just from that story, but I personally love that you were so vulnerable, and thank you for sharing what you went through, because I think it certainly resonates with me, and I know Dan, and it's going to resonate with so many people. We have this tendency to get wrapped up in the Western culture of society telling us where to live, what to do, how to, be in this world that is like so far off from our innate inheritance of this divine nature and connection that we have to, source, God, the universe, whatever you'd like to call it. So I think that's such a beautiful story of it unraveling. It's almost like, everything happens for a reason. I'm a believer that you maybe needed to go through what you went through to get you to this point to be such a magical medicine woman.
Yeah, I feel like it probably didn't feel it at the time, but as you tell the story now, it all makes such perfect sense, and it seems like everything just like lined up exactly how you needed it.
Yeah, it all makes such perfect sense. Like, I allowed myself to go and be taken so deep into the darkness in so many ways, and like to just like lose control, in so many ways, because the thing is, I'm like very sensitive, and I just didn't know like what to do with that sensitivity. Like I never learned how to feel my feelings and be completely okay with them, and so I just pushed it down and pushed it down. And then there's like this little part of me that's knowing like there's something deeper there, and so yeah, it was really amazing to just be like, okay, actually, like I don't need to push this down anymore. Actually, like there's some magic there in not pushing it down, that if I can just allow myself to like rest and give it space, then like life can be really good. Like I don't actually need to live down here in the darkness, but because I've been there, like so deep into my own like inner shadows, I feel much more able to help others who have gone there or are there, and
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate so much with that. We've taped a couple episodes recently about how me personally, super highly sensitive, always push it down, never knew how to feel my feelings. I feel like you probably remember that from the Costa Rican like retreat that I was saying that. I didn't know that. Two things, actually. I want to tell you that I was also a communications major in college.
Oh.
I didn't switch it. I stayed with it, but just another commonality. And when you mentioned that you went to Costa Rica in April for your birthday, is your birthday in April?
Yeah, my birthday's April 19th.
Mine's the 16th.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Are you Aries or Taurus?
I'm a Taurus by 2 hours. I'm like a very
okay, right on the cusp.
yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh, see another commonality.
Right?
How awesome.
Oh,
Okay,
man.
well, let's dive back in.
Yeah, 'cause I want to continue this story, I guess, your origin story. So like once you got to Costa Rica, like what is sort of the training to become a medicine woman? I have no idea how this works.
Okay, so it's interesting because, I have my degree, so I've already got a lot of background in like religious experience. I've studied meditation. I've studied like a lot of different, from the psychological perspective, like a lot of different ways that we can reach a state of oneness. I wrote a lot of papers around William James. He has like a very specific definition of what a religious experience is. And I would basically take different plant medicines or interview people who had taken different plant medicines, research them, and then I would just fit like the experiences into his criteria. So my whole like thesis proving over and over again that like plant medicine is inducing a religious experience in people or giving people a moment of like understanding something greater. And so when I came to Costa Rica, I was like freshly sober from alcohol. I had actually just had a really like unpleasant experience with mushrooms backpacking in the wilderness, which I would not recommend to anybody. I had like a moment of like praying where I was like, please God, if I just can like survive this, then I will never like use these medicines in this way again, like only with consciousness, from here on out. So I went to a community in Costa Rica really super innocently to meditate, just to like meditate. And I was like 1 month sober from alcohol to like continue that healing journey for myself and really like to dive into my own shadows and see like, what am I running from here? Like, why have I spent all of these years just pushing everything down? And then when I arrived to the community that I would be staying in, they are like a medicine community. And they have like a very interesting combination of Osho and medicine, which I don't know if it exists like anywhere else in the world, but it's amazing because the meditation is like such an opening, and it really allows you when you're meditating so often to go, deeper into the medicine and deeper into your inner world. So I was surprised as I entered this place where I came to meditate and be in silence and really just to like work on myself, that also like I had discovered a place where like, they call it medicine instead of drugs. Like, just that alone, I was like, this is incredible, like, and a place where people were like doing these things and healing together in community. And it was so eye-opening to me, like, oh, wow, like these things that I've always known have the potential for healing, that I've, spent so much of my life like researching and learning about and just so passionate about. Like, there's a whole space, community here where they are like praying with these sacred tools, and together, and there's like no judgment and there's no stigma. And it's just like the most beautiful like thing, the most beautiful family feeling that you could ever imagine, So I was just like, honestly, I thought that maybe I had died. I spent like some period of time being like, I think that I'm in heaven. Like, I think if I were to have designed heaven, like this is exactly how I would have designed it. It's just like so lovely here. So that was the beginning. And then there was a lot of conversations between like myself and different medicines where I had like rememberings, where exactly what you said earlier, where it's like everything leading up to my point in this life, like was so intentional, so necessary to get me exactly where I was in that moment. And as I remembered, I was like, oh my gosh, like I am a medicine woman, actually. Like, I totally understand. Like, why I went through all these things, and like why I went so deep into the darkness, and why I was like so obsessed with this, and why, like, these little like twinklings of like, this is what I need to do, this is where I need to be, that I had followed, that had taken me all over the world, but still I felt lost. Like they all kind of just came together and like, this is why. And I had like a really beautiful, I remember, I mean, this isn't a small community and a lot of people come, and I think it's really common also that like you take medicine, you have an expansive experience, and you're like, I want to do this forever, like I want
Yeah.
to do my job. And I just, but I was like in this community, like, no, I'm telling you guys, like, I'm a medicine woman. Like, this is like absolutely my path. And I think people thought I was pretty crazy. And then in December, I looked at a friend that I had met like all those years ago, and he was like, well, Brittany, like you were right, like you were absolutely just like 100% right. And like, so many people say it, but here you are doing it. And it's so beautiful to see you doing it in this way. And yeah, so it was just like a remembering. And then once like all of the veils were lifted, everything just easily fell into place, which was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like heaven on earth. I mean, I can I
Yeah,
can
it was
imagine
amazing.
that.
And so many synchronicities, like I began to be able to work in a mushroom lab there, learning how to grow oyster mushrooms. And the woman working in the lab that was teaching me to grow oyster mushrooms, she started holding mushroom ceremonies. And then at some point I got picked up hitchhiking by the person who is now my teacher.
Wow.
Very, very closely with all the time. And just like little things, like I would meet somebody and I would be like, we're going to work together. And then like they would all just like happen so easily in a way that it's like, it almost should not be this easy.
Yeah.
But I know that it's meant to be. And that's why it's just like unfolding
Mhm.
so quickly.
I think that that's so magical. And I mean, I can see the way that you're speaking. Like, I think this truly is what it means to like flow with life. Like
Mhm.
everything just really happens synchronistically, and
Mhm.
everybody might say like, wait, that's a weird coincidence, how did it happen? But when you're in alignment with your soul's purpose, and you knew this from the depths of your heart, all of these people begin showing up, all the opportunities begin showing up, and it works out in the most way
Mhm.
because there is a bigger purpose for it. So it's almost like you're just allowing life to work through you as opposed to, resist it, which typically most people tend to do with their, stressful jobs and their life and things like that. And they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, as opposed to you getting to that rock bottom point, but then having the awareness and beautiful, life that you've created for yourself through you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like I remember thinking like, how can I get here, right? Like it
Yeah.
feels
Mhm.
like it's like leap, between like where you are and where you want to be. And so many clients that I have are like, I just want to know like what is gonna light my soul up, And I'm like, yeah, I do know. Like I used to go and I would be like, I'm gonna go talk to my soul. And I would like try so hard to get there to like hear my soul. And I think like really the best way that I learned to talk to my soul, like now my soul just like I'm just flowing with life. So my soul is like constantly talking to me. But I had to just take the leap of like, maybe this isn't going to work out. I might be like alone in Costa Rica in a tent, terrified, like,
Yeah.
but like I'm willing to take the leap because like I'm desperate for something else, like I have to believe that it can be different than this.
Yeah, it was like that underlying faith was a little bit
Mhm.
stronger. That tiny bit of fear you might have had, it almost didn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's dive into really what's going on here with the psilocybin and the magic mushrooms that they are. These plants are sacred. Like you were explaining, the community that you went to, they're praying over them, they're chanting over them. Explain kind of what's going on with that. And then when we do, anybody who ingests psilocybin during, we'll say a bigger mushroom ceremony, what's happening both spiritually and physically to our bodies?
Okay. So the mushrooms themselves are like sponges, right? So they're going to soak up really easily all the energy that's in the space that they're in, that everybody who have touched them, like they're very sensitive. So they're just going to soak everything up that they come in contact with. And if you go back, thousands of years, I mean, especially with the mushrooms, I just have this image of like cavemen, even like before Homo sapiens, like walking around just eating mushrooms, like that's just such a natural thing. They came before everything else, and they're such a part of us. They're so connected to us as humans. And I believe that like indigenous ancient cultures knew that, and you can find evidence all over the world of these sacraments being used in different types of ceremonies, and it's really amazing because like without even without even knowing it, you're like in my ceremony, I'm somehow like doing the same thing. And then I'll read in a book like, oh yeah, we drank cacao and we had mushrooms and like it was so cool. It's just like, wow, it's like our cellular DNA remembers how we are connected to these different plants. And I think that as like society, as we've gone through all these different evolutions, we kind of got further and further from nature, and we also got further and further from like community and ceremony, and so much of what I studied in school was just how we as humans, we need something sacred. Like we really need something to rally around and to like gather ourselves around. And so often it's like in the US, it's something like football because we're missing it, we're missing it. We want a place to come together. So it's like, let's come together over football. Like, it's just like, where is that meeting place? But the meeting place, I think in so many ancient lineages used to be the plants and like these experiences with the different plants. Yes. So now you're in, especially in the States, it's like the first time I took mushrooms, like I did it secretively, I didn't want my parents to find out, like I didn't want to get into trouble. And there's so much stigma around it, like that you're going to go crazy, that you're going to, like hurt yourself. And so then it's really beautiful to come back to and see, and also to have the opportunity to like meet and study with these beautiful indigenous like wisdom carriers who are like, we've been doing it like this for thousands of years, like we have thousands of years of wisdom passed down, and we've seen the healing that can happen. Like the potential for healing is unlimited. And I believe that there's something just really profound and special about healing in community, like because then you have that central thing to gather around. And that's why for me, like in my ceremonies, the altar is so important because
oh my gosh, yeah.
Right, like the altar is what we gather around, that we've been like carrying and praying around since like particularly me, but me and the team that I work with, like we have chosen this altar and we come back to it again and again and again. So it holds so much power, and then we can gather the people around it, and we're not doing anything. We're just holding the space, and the altar is anchoring the space. And because we have such trust in that, in space and in what we're doing there, it's just like incredible to see what can unfold in that space in between all of it. And I know what I get, like a question I get a lot is like, and also for me, right? Like in the beginning, I was like, well, I like to have mushrooms like in my bed. Like I like to be able to eat cake. I don't want to be told like I can't leave somewhere. I need to do like this or that, like I don't want to be like limited in my experience. But then the thing is, what I found is that you're not actually limited. You're just being really held. So you feel so safe in the experience that it can be even more expansive because that you're safe, and that you're held, and that there are tools and people And there's just something like so profound about not being alone.
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it amazingly. The altar that you had in Costa Rica, it was, I mean, I'm used to little altars that, you have either in your house or your apartment or something like that. This was just uh, magical
Mm.
beyond words. And it was gorgeous. And I will say too, we were actually discussing with some friends of ours once we got back from Costa Rica, and we were telling them that we had the psilocybin ceremony. They kind of asked the same question, like they're people who are avid psilocybin users, and they were like, well, but had never done it in a sacred space and haven't done it with like other people or ceremony. And they were like, well, what's the difference? And it's everything. Like it's like I can't.
Yeah.
It's almost an indescribable feeling. Like it's just a felt presence, exactly like you said. You go into the ceremony, we set really big intentions, and to know that other people were almost like obviously having their individual experience, but like there was a mutual collaboration of just like loving acceptance, this container to open and expand our awareness and consciousness, to have the mushrooms take us to where we like need to grow and heal ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
just like such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's so beautiful, to be able to, and also because there's like, the music, there's so many like
Yes.
factors that go into it that you just cannot replicate on your own.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's the
Yeah.
music, and there's these people who are just dedicated to the medicine, to the study of the medicine, to the study of energy, to the study of healing, in so many different ways. And so it's like so cool to bring them together and then just allow a group of people to like blossom and do what they love,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
watch how that like impacts everybody in the room.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The fire too is also like having
Mm,
having different places to go and different things to experience and be able to sit by the fire and I
yes.
think it would also played a huge role in my experience was that we had time to like we had met with you before and we had time to set intentions and really be intentional about the whole process and like kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
just put that out there.
And I can't remember, this was definitely before the actual ceremony, but you had mentioned obviously the innate knowledge of mushrooms and their healing capabilities. And it's almost like they're going to give you what you need within this ceremony, not necessarily what you want. So I want you to dive a little bit into that. And our listeners who are avid listeners will know that Dan and I talked extensively about our journeys and individually what we went through. But I don't want to give too much away because everybody's journey is different. What they're gonna get, but you do. It can be very introspective when you close your eyes because you're seeing a lot of, or at least from my experience, I saw a lot of beautiful colors, a lot of geometric shapes. For Dan, he was seeing, faces, women, all other medicine women that he maybe described it. What's kind of going on in our brains? What's happening when we take these mushrooms and kind of what walls are coming down? Like what dimensions are we blending in? We talked about that oneness. You feel that connection to everything. There's almost not a separation anymore that goes on.
Yeah, so there's like so many levels that you can look at it, right? Like you can look at it from the mind level, which is just like in the essence of the mind level, your mind is being flooded with feel good chemicals, right? That
Yeah.
are like, so that's amazing, right? Like the mind being flooded with those feel good chemicals, which so often I think in our day to day life become depleted. Um, that anyway is just like a moment of like, I can feel good. Like I can escape
Mm,
Mhm.
the constant train of thought that's just like my mind, and I can drop into my heart and I can actually allow myself to feel, and I can actually allow myself to feel things that I've been avoiding feeling for a really long time because my mind is like terrified. So I feel like it kind of just opens a valve, you know, in the mind, just from the like very like neurological standpoint of there's a flood of chemicals and those chemicals are like creating new neural pathways because it's like, okay, so now with these new chemicals in our brain, we can perceive reality in a new way. And as we're perceiving reality in a new way, we're like understanding the information in a new way. And in that, we're creating new pathways. Because if you think about like neural pathways as like little wheels, like say wheels on a car, you know, so it's like they get in a rut. They're going the same way all the time, you know, and then it's like, okay, now we're just going to take the sidewalk and we're going to move the sidewalk like, you know, 1 inch to the left. And then the wheels aren't in the rut anymore. So then it's like, okay, so now we can create a new path. Like now by that simple like movement, so small, you wouldn't think it would matter at all. But it creates an opportunity to make something new, right? Like even if it's just a new rut, it's a different rut than the one that you have been like driving through for all of your life, you know, up to this point.
That's a beautiful
Yeah.
picture and way to describe it. Yes, absolutely.
Parenting can be stressful and even overwhelming, especially if you have an overly sensitive child. What if there was a way to better understand, guide, and nurture your child's unique sensitivity and emotional intelligence to set them up for success on their developmental journey? Rooted Rhythm's signature course, Tuned In, offers a transformational process for parents of highly sensitive, super feeling, wise, and empathetic children. You know, Dan and I don't have children of our own, but we were both highly sensitive children growing up. And we know firsthand how difficult it can be to feel and process emotions in a productive and constructive way at such a young age. Recently, having gone through the Tuned In course, we both took away so much valuable information and practical tools we could utilize to reparent ourselves and to understand how to better use our sensitive nature to deepen our connection to ourselves as well as the world around us. The Tuned In course teaches parents concrete skills to meet their sensitive kids' needs in moments of intensity, increases their ability to connect deeply with their children, and supports a process of inner healing to shift how they relate to parenting. Each module offers unique grounding and embodiment meditations, lectures full of both evidence-based and practical content, and supplementary exercises to support in the implementation of new skills. Parents who have taken this course report walking away from the experience feeling relaxed in their being and confident to parent their children in a way that both feels most true to them as a parent, as well as most supportive for their children. If this resonates with you as a parent or simply for yourself, we're excited to offer our listeners $100 off of this transformational course. Click the link in our show notes, which goes directly to the Rooted Rhythm Tuned In course website, and enter the discount code DEEP Life, all one word, to receive $100 off of the Tuned In course.
Yeah, so that I would say is like one. And then if you go into the more like energetic, spiritual, you know, these plants they carry information. I think what I and so many people like can easily forget is that like we are nature. We are not like separate from nature, you know. We are nature. Like we are the wave, we are the tree. And when we connect with the plants are reminding us that like they're our family, you know, like in the same way that they have like that we have a personality, so do they. And they can meet us there, and then you can connect with the spirit of those different plants. Like the mushrooms, for example, they carry the spirit of the children, you know, they call them like the sacred children, niños sagrados. And so they carry that like joyful, innocent spirit. And even though as you're like taking them, as you're navigating all these different, you know, experiences that are so individual, you can continue to connect to that like joyful, innocence that they bring, because you feel it there. It's like, you know, right
Mhm.
behind every like tear is a laugh, you know, and they,
Yes.
you know, it's like, I feel like the mushrooms remind you that it doesn't have to be so serious. It can be also like playful, and that we can really do deep inner work, but also we can have fun, we can enjoy it, you know.
Mhm.
And at each of the different plants, there's so many, they have a different spirit, you know. Some of them are more like elders, some of them will give you like the lessons a little bit like, you know, more firm. But
Yeah.
what I love
Yeah.
about the mushrooms is like that innocence and that joy and that playfulness that they bring.
Yeah. And you've worked with other plant medicines, right?
Yeah, I also work very closely with ayahuasca, with the Colombian lineage of the ayahuasca, the Ahe. But
Yes.
I love like all of the I love a lot of the plant medicines. I won't say all because I'm like super full with the ones in my life, but
Mhm.
there's also the cactuses, peyote and witchy,
Mhm.
which are also really beautiful teachers. I don't work with them as closely as the mushrooms and the ayahuasca, just because my time is not infinite.
Mhm.
But I love them, and I find that like each of them has such a beautiful like way to come and to help and to soothe, you know. Like the ayahuasca is like a grandmother, so she's kind of,
Mhm.
here are the lessons, and the cactuses are like grandfathers, so you know, some of them are opening your heart and some of them are just like showing you the ways in which you're limiting yourself, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so it's so beautiful to connect with the many different spirits that there are, and to just honor them as friends, and to nourish like the relationships that we can build with the plant family as our friends.
That's beautiful.
I know. I love it. It's just like I
I
get chills.
I do wanna come back to, mushrooms, but while we're kinda on the different plant medicines, like, for people that, like, are maybe intrigued by the idea and interested in plant medicine, but have no idea where to turn, do you have any, I don't know, like, suggestions, I guess, as far as, like, where
Yeah,
to turn, or if there's a good plant medicine for beginners?
plant medicine for beginners. Okay, so
This
I should
is my book.
Yeah,
I
if
should
it's
do a
anything
plant
you can take
medicine
at
for
Walmart.
beginners. I think the first place to start is really like in your own backyard, because it doesn't necessarily have to even be psychedelic plants. It's like, first, just start by like allowing yourself to maybe see if you can feel the energy of like any single plant that's in your garden. That's like such a good place to start, because you know, I think as humans and like in the culture that we're in, we have a tendency to believe that the things that are going to be best for us are like really far away, and that like we need a shaman and we have to go, you know. And it's like really like the weeds in your own backyard are some of the best medicine you can find in so many situations. So I would say start there. There's a book that I really love called Plant Spirit Medicine that I
Okay.
would definitely recommend. And it's not even, it's again just like all plants and their spirits, but it's a beautiful way to kind of see how you can build those relationships and connect. And then I would say like there are places in the world, here where I am in Nosara, Costa Rica is like one of them, where there's just like an abundance of plant medicine. You know, it's amazing. Like Amsterdam has a lot of freedom there. Here in Costa Rica, we have a lot of freedom. I know Jamaica, Peru, Colombia. Like if you like start to open your consciousness to the idea of it, and you start to like establish those dialogues with the plants that are closest to you, then the other plant spirits that are meant to come to you, like they find their way to you. You just have to kind of start to open your eyes to that world and attune yourself, and it's crazy. Like once it's there, it's everywhere, you know. But it's
Mhm.
just like, but it's like you have to open that channel of possibility, you know, and then it just kind of it unfolds in a really beautiful way. There's a woman who I love. Her name is Kat Courtney. she calls herself the afterlife shaman. She's amazing. And you can find her on like Instagram. And I think they also have, she's connected to an Instagram called Plant Medicine People. But they're doing a lot of cool things, just like breaking it down and explaining and sharing different offerings. And
yeah, that's really helpful. And we're going to look into that, and we'll probably put it in the show notes too, because kind of like you're saying, like, we've been on this spiritual wellness journey, as you know, similar to yourself. So we kind of knew about, you know, plant medicines, the different kinds. I mean, we've only taken psilocybin. We're really excited to try ayahuasca soon. But I was also explaining to a girlfriend when I got back from Costa Rica, I said we had like the most beautiful psilocybin ceremony. And she's like, "What is that? Tell me." And I was just like, "Oh, wait, I guess I was caught off, because maybe it's not as you know, talked about, or just used, you know, brushed off, like you said, the stigma around mushrooms." So we're so happy that you're kind of continuing to expand our knowledge and awareness, but for other people to really learn and, you know, question how beautiful and how changed their lives, you know, can be. It's like you said, it's just like opening that valve. It's like kind of opening something within their brains in a really like profound and exciting way, like allowing new information to come in. That's, I think, beneficial. Like, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but like, it's helped me in the most amazing ways.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and so amazing. One thing I would say is, like, you know, the indigenous people, the indigenous medicine carriers, like, I have so much love and respect for them. And to go back, like, look through history, look at those ancient cultures, because what's happening now in the world that I see is that, like, these plant medicines for a long time, and the ceremonial way that they were being used as sacraments, they felt the need to hide them because so much is taken away through colonization, right? So then it's like, now these people who so much has been taken from them, they feel that the world needs these medicines. And so they're more and more like opening these medicines and sharing these medicines with the world, you know, in Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and Peru. And you can go there and you can experience this like culture that's connected to the ceremony and to the medicines. And it's different. Like, each person on their path, whatever that they're looking for, I believe that each person is meant to work with like very specific healers, you know. I think that, like, the one thing is just to choose your healers wisely, right? Like, make sure that it's somebody that you trust, make sure that it's somebody that you feel safe with, it's somebody who, you know, is confident and has experience, and that they're doing it for the right reasons, and someone that you feel a connection to. And then if for whatever reason, like, you have an experience and it's like, you know, not what you thought it would be, or maybe like something comes up, and it can be frightening, like there's a lot there, you know. So coming back to the memory that, like, you trusted yourself when you chose to have this experience, and you trusted this person when you chose to work with them and allow yourself to have that experience. And no matter what happened and how you're feeling, you know, in the aftermath, because the integration is such a process, and it needs like so much care. But just remembering that, you know, if you came like with an open heart and you really like listened to your intuition and chose that person that you want to work with as a healer wisely, then everything is perfect. Like, even those hard moments, even like the difficulties in the before and the after, like, it's also perfect, because that's how we learn, and that's how we grow, and that's how we, you know, like, that's how things happen for us, to awaken us to our highest potential.
I love that. That was so good.
It's so uncomfortable though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've discussed a lot about kind of the ceremony space of, you know, mushrooms, maybe, you know, kind of like a larger dose, if you would, but there's also microdosing and huge benefits from that. Can you talk about the differences between that and what it kind of means to microdose and how long you do it for? And is it something that you continue to do or you do it incrementally?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of different opinions. So I'm just going to tell you like what my opinion is, and it's just that, like, open for discussion. But I really believe from what I found that a microdose is somewhere between zero point 0.1 and 0.25. So zero point 0.1 is going to be 1/10 of a gram. And then 0.25 is going to be a fourth of a gram.
Mm.
So it's still like a very small dose. And it's meant to be very subtle, almost imperceivable. It's working like on a very subtle energetic level. So the plan is not to like take your microdoses and, you know, like go on a journey. The plan is like you can take your microdoses and then you can go to work, or you can take them and then you can do your day-to-day activities. You can continue to live your life in a normal way. And that maybe on those days that you take your microdoses, like maybe the colors will be a little bit brighter, or maybe there's like a feeling that you've been avoiding, and that feeling just allows itself to be expressed, you know, or maybe you just notice something that you didn't notice before. You're capable of being a little bit more present, you know. Some people, they feel like one way on the day they actually take the microdose, and then they notice on the next day they feel much better. So it's like, you know, I had this on my microdose day, and actually on the days after my microdoses, I feel really good. And then the idea is that it's working slowly over time to rewire the neural pathways and create new neural pathways. So I think 3 months is kind of a good space to start. And then you want to take some breaks in between during that 3 months. So maybe you'll do like 3 weeks, 1 week off, 3 weeks, 1 week off, 3 weeks, 1 week off. And then it's like, okay, it's been now 3 months. Let me look back and see like, how is this impacting me over this course of 3 months? How has my life changed? You know, what is my net neutrality? How am I processing my emotions? Am I in general like more capable of handling stress? Am I taking better care of myself? There are all kinds of questions. I really encourage people, when you start a microdosing protocol, that you journal. And if you know, like, journaling is not everybody's thing, but if you're not going to journal, then you really like take the microdoses on such a regular, like that you're taking them every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that at the very least you can look back for yourself and say, okay, so on Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, I have great days. You know, things tend to go better for me. I tend to feel good at the end of the day, those types of things.
Is
And then,
microdosing something that's been done like traditionally for, is it like the like ancestral kind of thing, or is this like a newer? So the first I ever heard of it was like Tim Ferriss talking about like Silicon Valley tech bros doing it to like type more code. Is it
yeah,
something that's always been around?
I feel like it's, I mean, definitely the popularity of it is newer.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's probably always been around in some form, in the same way that it's like, you know, of a smell. Like, I think that people who were living very closely with nature were probably so tuned in that they didn't need to take like large amounts, you know, like my teacher says at some point we were all so in tune with nature that nobody needed to take medicine ever at all, you know. So I feel like it's a kind of a slow evolution, and I'm sure that like there's been all levels of dosing throughout time.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I think like just the research on it and really utilizing it as a tool is much more recent, you know. And especially just in the same way like anxiety, depression, pharmaceuticals, like it's kind of this question of, have they always existed and we just didn't have the language for it? So like as a communications major, it's like language is such a big part of it, because it's like, did it always exist that we had anxiety and we had depression and we just didn't know how to talk about it as humans, you know?
Mm.
Or is it new because of the society that we're living in now, where we're like more separate from the land and there's just so much input all the time, so it's kind of one of those. But I think like definitely in the way that we're like talking about it and working with it now, it's much more recent, like probably in the last 20 years or so, 30 years.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think one of the biggest things that I haven't done microdosing over that long period of time. But just the one time that I did it, it almost like it kind of just like you're saying, it's like what's happening in the brain is that it's beginning to have like the new neural pathways being created, which is like so important. We talk about that a lot on the podcast because you want to create these new neural pathways if you are looking to, improve your life or do things differently, because the neural pathways that are in our subconscious are so ingrained within us that we've done for decades upon decades, and it can be very hard to make smaller changes. So it's almost like the medicine, these mushrooms of doing the microdose is just helping us in a way, like drop so much of our ego that's in resistance to the change that's going on, that it's just like the mushrooms are almost like allowing it to happen in a very gentle way. Is that right?
Yeah, it's totally like it's doing a couple of things. When I remember this like thing that I learned in college that I always was like, that's so cool. This word called de-robotization, right? So it's the idea that we become robots, like everything goes on autopilot. Our mind is so advanced, that we're just like brushing our teeth. We don't realize we're brushing our teeth. We're like going to work the same way every day. There's so many things that we just do without even thinking about it. And those are like the patterns that get ingrained. And you can start to break those patterns super easily by like, I brush my teeth with my right hand every day. Now I'm going to brush my teeth with my left hand. Or like I sleep on this side of the bed. I'm going to try to sleep on this side of the bed. Like these little minor things that you wouldn't think make such a huge difference, but it force your brain to like rewire itself, to a way that isn't just so deeply ingrained. And I think that's the same way that the microdoses are working, because the microdoses are just so subtly altering your reality that you then have to move from that just very slightly altered reality. And then that gives space to create something new.
Yes.
It's just like a little pattern interrupt.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a very slight pattern interrupt, but instead of it just being like, okay, I'm going to brush my teeth with my left hand. So that's like a very specific, but this is like, I'm going to like move your entire world, like slightly in this direction. So then it's creating like space for everything to be rewired, because it's like the whole way that you're perceiving reality has been just slightly shifted.
When you say that, I imagine like a blind person and you move around all their furniture and they have to like refigure out how to navigate life. Where it's like, it's kind of funny at first, but then also it like makes a lot of sense. It's like, you need to be aware all of a sudden because things are different.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to be aware and you need to be present, which is so hard for us as humans to come back to presence.
Yeah. You had mentioned sort of the integration process a little bit before, and sort of how that can be challenging. And I do want to like definitely touch on like when people have, whether it is with just microdosing, they're saying kind of changing your perspective, or especially having like this big dose in a ceremony that kind of blows your mind a little bit, and then everything is different, and then you go back home right back into the same life. Like, how do you navigate that and sort of not lose that shift that you had?
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to like the trust, right? That like once you have those sorts of experiences, they can't be like lost necessarily. Like, they're shifting something like very deep inside you. They can reach like into the past, into the future, you know? So it's like that trust and that remembrance that like, even if things feel the same, like you aren't the same. And then there's like small, tiny things that you can change, you know? And I think it's like action steps, right? It's like a friend of mine told me recently, like, okay, so like, let's say you want a husband. So you're going to pray for a husband, and then you're going to have this whole beautiful prayer and this expansive experience where you like see your partner and you see how you're going to get there. But what are you going to do in your life to make space for that person to come in? Like, is there room in your bed? Is there room like in your time, in your calendar? Like, are you meeting people? Like, are you doing these actionable steps to be able to take that information, that prayer, that trust, and then like bring it into your day-to-day reality? Because like we're so connected with everything. Everything is so connected. I think that's what the mycelium really teaches you, right? But it's also like, it's not just going to get handed to you on a silver platter. You know, like that's the temptation, but it's like, no, I've seen that there's like a way to create this connection, to call in this thing, to set this intention. But what can I do in my everyday life that allows that to be possible, you know? And just to ask like those types of questions of yourself. Like maybe it's just, I'm going to wake up and not look at my phone and instead walk outside and be with the sun. Remember that like I'm part of nature, you know? Or it could be like, you know, I want to share my gifts more. So then it's like, okay, so I'm just gonna invite like one person in to share my gifts with them, you know, or I'm just gonna take that first step in the direction. So I think it's really those like tiny actionable steps of the microdosing, I have some chainsawing going on.
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's like the microdosing, or you know, a larger ceremony. Those are both just like seeds that are planting. And if you think about it, like in the garden of life, you plant the seeds, and that's important. Like nothing can happen if you don't plant the seeds. But also, if you plant the seeds and then you just leave them and you never look at them again, like are they going to blossom, you know? Or are there things that you can go back every day and you can water the seeds and you can watch them, and then you can see how they are actually creating change in your life?
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful analogy. I think that is amazing. And I think really this helped me so much when we were in Costa Rica and we did the ceremony, was setting intention, like having a really big intention going into the ceremony that you were really speaking with your specific, you know, dose to help you with. Because for me, and I can share this, I actually wanted to touch upon this really quickly before we let you go, Brittany, but I think I was listening to you either on another podcast or if it was part of your YouTube series with the Witchy Business, but you were describing, I'm not sure if this gentleman was speaking to you, but I think he was a Peruvian either healer or shaman, and like his father had just passed away, who was like this big shamanic healer, and I think they were in like a ayahuasca ceremony, and like he was just so sad. He was extremely sad. All he kept doing was crying and crying and crying, and the ayahuasca wasn't like helping. And I think someone said to him like, take the mushrooms, please try the mushrooms, they'll help. And he took the mushrooms, and immediately like the sadness went away. And that was my exact experience in Costa Rica during that ceremony with you. And it happened so unbelievably quickly, like within an hour and a half of the ceremony. I almost couldn't believe it in a sense. And then I love that you use, or at least told us that like these plants, the mushrooms are like the children, like they want you to have fun, because the rest of the journey, I mean, a lot of stuff I am still unpacking and integrating, but I had a lot of fun. And it was almost like you have to go in with the intentionality, and also understanding that when you set that intention, whatever it may be, like allowing it to actually take place. as opposed to like gripping onto it, having that grip that we're too afraid to like let go of something or let something new in.
Mhm.
Did I get the story right of the gentleman?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
something like that?
I actually hadn't thought about that in a really long time.
I think
But
it just it stood out to me because I had that
yeah,
exact experience. That's
yeah,
why.
yeah. It's like a Peruvian, a family, a lineage of Peruvian medicine people. They work with wachuma and ayahuasca. And yeah, their father, it's a brother, like two brothers. And one of them was telling me, yeah, like my father passed away. You know, we're working with medicine all our lives. We drank ayahuasca. I was still sad. You know, I drank the wachuma. The wachuma is like heart opening. It really helps you like feel your feelings. Like it's like a sweet grandfather, you know, but he was like, I drank the wachuma and I was still sad. And somebody said like, please take the mushrooms. And yeah, the mushrooms like were the thing that finally allowed him to like move and release that sadness and come back to the joy, you know, because I think as children also like death doesn't have that impact because it doesn't feel as permanent, you know. So I think there's something of that, like children are so connected, you know, still to like the other world, like they haven't even fully landed, you know.
Yeah.
So for them, it's like, okay, maybe this person isn't any longer in the physical body, but I still feel them, I still know them. So they don't have that like holding on and missing so much. And I wonder if that's also part of the magic of the mushrooms and how they're so able to help people, particularly with grieving. I mean, this is something I'm super passionate about, but so many of the medicine people that I know that work with mushrooms, like we're all just like, I want to help people who are grieving because I see the potential there. I see how you can take these mushrooms and you can feel the grief moving through your body. And that is such a powerful release. Like this weight is on your heart and it just slowly gets lifted.
Absolutely. Like I feel that in my heart, like the depth of it. Brittany, you were there for the retreat. Like, you know, like I had lost my cousin just over 6 months ago and I cried every single day, all day. Like I say cousin, but she was my sister, soul sister for sure. And when I left that grief and that sadness after that ceremony, since being back in Massachusetts, I've only cried 3 times.
Wow.
I mean, like, it's just like, I indescribable. Again, like the feeling's indescribable because it's obviously personal, but like, it's just tremendous relief and letting go, but also like honoring. I can finally talk about her. I can finally look at pictures. I can finally like remember her in the purest, like the most fun person like to ever be around and not have that grappling like pain and grief. It's tremendous.
Wow. It's like you get given a tool, like a way to tend to your grief, you know, because we have this grief and it's big and it's important and it shouldn't be like pushed to the side. And it's not like we should just get over it and get back to life, you know, it needs to be recognized and it needs to be to, and there needs to be space for that. But then it's like, how do I tend to my grief? Because it just feels so overwhelming to even think about it that I don't know how to feel it, you know, and how to really like let it flow through me. Because when you get back to that, like flowing through me, there's like the honoring of this person mattered. I miss them, you know, this person is gone. They're important to me. I want to like tend to that grief. I want to give it its time. And I think that the mushrooms just give you those tools to be able to really like feel it without getting stuck, you know, in that feeling.
Without attaching to the feeling. Absolutely. Because I understand that. And again, it's a feeling. I feel the sadness come up and I almost allow it and then it dissipates. It's just not attaching to it, where before I felt like I was clinging onto it almost.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Brittany, I mean, this has been so much fun, so wonderful. I feel like you have expanded our knowledge, and I know our listeners as well, for all things plant medicine, but to give the mushrooms an extra ode to their beautiful wisdom that they've had anything that you think that's like to wrap up here that you didn't mention that you want to, talk about for psilocybin or any plant medicines before we let you go?
I just want to say that if you're curious, I think curiosity is like one of the most beautiful teachers that we have. And I know that like my curiosity led me here. It led me from like going to the library and just like reading everything that I could find. So I think like just for anybody who's curious, just to know that there's like a whole world out there and that you can just stay curious and keep your eyes open and listen, and that's so much beauty that you can find there, and it doesn't even have to be like that you take the microdoses or that you go to Costa Rica and have a full journey, but just that you like stay open to the possibilities of that exist in the world in so many different ways.
I think that's beautiful. There's so much more to this world than we were ever taught or led to believe. There's so many magical moments and in
so
existence.
Much we can't see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Brittany, where can people find you if they are interested in, learning more about your specific journey and how you work with the magic of mushrooms?
So you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Brittany Lee Smith. And also you can find me on my website, which is also brittanyleesmith.com. And via Instagram and my website, there's contact information for me. And I'm pretty responsive. Like I'm also curious and I always love to connect and talk with people. So eventually like you can send me a WhatsApp message, or WhatsApp is probably the best way. So if you go, that far, and then you'll find on there my WhatsApp information, and you can just send me a message. I'm always happy to meet new friends and fellow travelers on the path.
Absolutely. And I think both of us we thank the universe every day that our paths crossed for your beautiful nature and your just this amazing medicine woman that you are, to have this opportunity to share and continue our connection into the future.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same. I'm so happy to have met you both. Just like rays of light, and I'm happy to call you guys friends. Really special.
Yeah.
Thank you
Brittany.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.